Hello, my name is Emma, and in today's video, I am going to teach you English for life. So what do I mean by that? Well, there are many important English expressions and words we use when we talk about life events and life stages. I've drawn here a timeline to kind of show you what I mean. So in this video, I am going to teach you some key expressions or words when we're talking about people and their birth or when they are born. We're going to talk about some key words about school and education, some keywords and expressions for work, for when people get married and have families, for retirement, and then for when people die. So many of us are in different stages of our lives. And so whether you're talking about yourself or someone else, we use these words a lot. I've also noticed many learners make mistakes with a lot of the words I'm going to teach you today. So let's look at an example of this. We'll start with birth words, and then we'll move through life. Many learners have trouble with the word birth and born. They don't know how to talk about birth. So I want us to do a practice quiz, and then afterwards I'll tell you the answer and explain. So my question is, which is correct? Do we say, I born in Canada? I borned in Canada with ED. I birthed in Canada. I am born in Canada. And notice there's no ED here. Or I was born in Canada without ED. So which of these is the right way to talk about where our birth happens? Well, if you said answer number 5, you are correct. The way we talk about birth and being born is we say, I was born in Canada. So I see a lot of learners making mistakes with this specifically. So let's see some more examples of this and practice this. So let's look at different subjects and how we use born with them. So I is a subject, was, born. Again, when we use born, we need something before it, either was or were. I was born in. We often use the preposition in with born. And we can say either a year or a place. I was born in Canada. I was born in Toronto. I was born in, I'm not going to tell you the year I was born. I don't want you to know my age. But just for practice, I was born in 1954. Okay, we can also do you. You is the subject. And now, because we need the subject to match the verb, we have were. You were born in. And then you can put a year or a place. He or she, so he was born in. She was born in. And again, you end up with a year or a place. We were born in. And they were born in. So pay close attention just for the agreement with they and were, we were, he was, she was, you were, I was. All right, and again, notice there is no ED with born. So we say I was born. No ED needed. All right, so how can you use this in a conversation? Well, we often ask people questions about their birth. So we might ask somebody, where were you born? And this is a great question to memorize. So we have where, our question word. So we want to know the place. were you born? And again, notice where our be verb is just right after where. And then we have our subject word, and these two need to be in agreement. They need to match. Where were you born? So you can say this out loud. Practice it. Where were you born? You might ask somebody when. Women often don't like this question, but just so you can see how to ask the question, you can say, when were you born? Or maybe we're talking about someone else. When was she born? When was Taylor Swift born? When was Drake born? So this is how we would use this question. So I have some examples down here. Like I mentioned before, if we use the year, we can have the preposition in. She was born in 1984. She was born in May. So we can also use it for a month. But if we are using a specific birthday, we need to use on. She was born on May 24th, 1984. He was born on December 31st, 1982. So the next major life event we're going to talk about is graduation. So after someone finishes school, they graduate. So this is the spelling of the word graduate. And I want you to pay careful attention to the pronunciation because the DU actually has a Jew sound. Graduate. Graduate. And again, that means to complete your education. We can use this word when we graduate different types of schools. So I graduated grade 8 in 2000. I graduated high school in 2003. I graduated university in 2006. So you can use this with university, high school, or even earlier grades. So I just want to now look at the structure of this. I graduated, and I have ed here because we're talking about something from the past. In, so the preposition we use is in, and then we have a year. I graduated in 2000, for example. Now, what about if we want to talk about where we graduated from? Well, if you want to say the name of a university or the name of a school, then you use from. I graduated from the University of Toronto. I graduated from Harvard. That's not true, but just to give an example. You might also see this, where some people might say, I was graduated from. I was graduated from Oxford University. It is grammatically correct, but it's not common. So the more common examples are without was. I graduated from Oxford University. So it's always good to know a couple questions you can ask people about graduation because it's an important part of people's lives. So if you meet someone and you know they went to university, you might ask them, where did you go to school? Where did you go to university? And then they'll tell you a name, and then you might ask, oh, when did you graduate? When did you graduate? Oh, I graduated in 2004. All right, so we graduated school. Well, first we were born, some things happened, we graduated, and then we start working. So let's look at some work expressions that are really important to know. Well, so the first thing that is a life event is when you get a job, especially when you get your first job. So, and notice we use get a job, the past of get is got. So another way to say got a job is hired. When you are hired, and it has 2 syllables, hired, it means a company gives you a job or someone gives you a job. It's another way to say start a job. So these are some keywords to know: hired, got a job, start a job. And then if you do well at work, you might be promoted. So why am I going like this? Well, I'm trying to show that you might move up in the company. You might start, or here's another word, advance. Maybe you are a worker and then you get promoted and you become a supervisor. And then you're promoted again and you become a manager. And then you become the director, and maybe you're promoted and you become the president of the company. So this is what promoted means. It means to advance at work. And in this case, it's a verb, promoted. If we're talking about like a noun, we can say promotion. I have a promotion, or I was promoted. So let's look at some questions we might ask someone about work. And let's look at some example sentences too. So in 2007, I got my first job. So notice we could say I got my first job. I got a job. I was hired by, let's give a company name. I was hired by Apple or Google. Let's say Google. I was in 2007, I was hired by Google. That's not true, but just to give you an example of a sentence. In 2010, I was hired by Walmart. So what I'm doing is I'm showing hired. We have the verb here that helps it, was. And if you use things like you would say you were hired, he was hired, she was hired, they were hired. And again, it just means to get a job. So what are some common questions you might ask somebody about their work? Well, you might ask them, what do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? And this means, what is your job? Or you might say, what do you do for work? What do you do for work? Oh, I'm an engineer. I'm an English teacher. I'm a singer. You might also ask somebody where they work. Where do you work? So again, these are great questions to memorize because they come up in small talk a lot. All right, well, now let's get to the next life stage, which is getting married and engaged and starting a family. The next stage we're going to talk about is when someone gets engaged. So this means a person is not married, but they are planning to get married soon. So usually you might have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and it's a serious relationship. And then there is somebody brings a ring and says, "Will you marry me?" And the other person says, "Yes, I will." And then they put the ring on the finger, and now that couple is engaged. So, like I mentioned, engaged means there's a promise a wedding is going to happen. It's the period before the wedding when there's a promise a wedding will happen. So here are some example sentences on how to use this and how not to use this. My friend engaged. Notice the X here. So we do not use engaged in this way. When we use engaged, we need our be verb in front of engaged. So we can say, my friend is engaged. I am engaged. You are engaged. He is engaged. She is engaged. they are engaged. So this is a mistake I see many students make. They say, oh, we engaged. What they need to do is they need to remember this be verb. So here's another example. They engaged. So that's incorrect. They got engaged. This is another option. So you can either be engaged, like is engaged, or you can use get or got. That's possible too. I can say, I got engaged. My friend got engaged. They got engaged. So you have a choice between using the be verb or using the verb get or got. So now we are at marriage. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the common mistakes people make with the word marriage and marry and the different meanings. So we have marriage, marry, get married, and wed. So we'll go through each of these in a moment. But first, let's start with marriage. So marriage, and notice the pronunciation, the G has that soft G sound, marriage. It's a noun. The rest of these, marry, get married, wed, those are verbs, but we're now looking at a noun. And what this word means is it is the relationship between a husband and a wife or between spouses. So let's look at some examples of this word. And just so you know, this might be a new word. Sorry, spouse. A spouse just means somebody who is married. So if you have a husband, you can say my spouse. If you have a wife, you can say my spouse. So spouse has that meaning. It's not gendered. So we don't know if the spouse is a man or a woman. So let's look at some examples of marriage. My grandparents had a happy marriage. We often use the verb have or has or had with marriage. Here's another example. He is afraid of marriage. He is scared of marriage. And our final example, same-sex marriage is legal in Canada. So same-sex marriage means when you have two men who get married or two women who get married. So this is how we refer to it in Canada, same-sex marriage. It's legal in Canada. So now let's look at the verbs I mentioned earlier. I want you to think about which of these is correct. So the first one I wrote is I married or we married. I am married. We are married. I was married. We were married. I got married. We got married. Or we wed. Well, the answer is it depends on what your meaning is. These have slightly different meanings. So let's first look at the word wed. So wed is a verb, and it means when two people are married, they get married. When we use the word wed, it's old-fashioned and uncommon. This means we used to use the word wed more often, but we don't use it much anymore. I'll give you an example of this word. Barack Obama and Michelle Obama wed in 1992. Again, we don't use this that often. The word we use more frequently is marry. Marry is a verb, and when we use marry as a verb, we're talking about the wedding event. When did the wedding happen? So, for example, we married in 1984. Obama and Michelle married in 1992. So this is possible, but what's the most often used or more common is to use the word got. got married. Or if we're talking about the future, get married. So marry and got married, get married, they have the same meaning. They're talking about the wedding event. So they're talking about when somebody says, do you take this man to be your husband? I do. So that's what they mean by getting married, that event. So here's an example. I got married in 1998. We got married in 1984. So you might ask somebody, when did you get married? I got married in 2011. And then if you're talking about the future, you might see will. We will get married. We will get married in the summer. We will get married in September. So that's how we use that. All right, so here's another word, married. But when we have is or are or a be verb in front of it, we use this when we're talking about our status. So I mentioned marry and got married has to do with the actual wedding. When did you make things official? When we use the word married, like is married, what we're talking about is we're talking about the status of someone. Are you married? Yes, I am. Or no, I am not. Are you single? Are you divorced? These are all examples of status. So my sister Audra is married. This means that we're not talking about the specific wedding event. We're talking about her current status in life is she is married. She is in a relationship with her husband. What about if somebody uses was? I was married. Well, it really depends. That can mean a lot of different things. It can mean somebody is divorced. I was married once. It can mean maybe they're a widow. A widow means the husband or wife died. So maybe they're now single, but in the past they were married. It can have different meanings depending on context. So what are some common questions we use when talking about marriage? Well, you might ask somebody, are you married? And the answer is, yes, I am. Yes, I am married. Or no, I am not married. You might ask somebody, how long? How long means years or months or days. How long have you been married? So this question means you want to know the time. How long have you been married? Oh, I have been married for 4 years. I have been married for 2 years. So those might be some answers you might hear. Or if you change this, how long has she been married? How long has your sister been married? She's been married for 2 years. So these are common questions we use frequently in conversation. So we talked about marriage. Let's now talk about babies and having children. So here are some words and expressions that are useful for people who have children. You might talk about have a baby or have children. You can also say start a family. These have the same meanings. So let's look at some examples. My sister Audra had a baby. My sister Audra had a baby. And notice we use the verb have or had here because it's the past. My friend Lucy is having a baby. This means the baby hasn't come yet, but in a couple of months, she's going to be a mom. We can also use this when for fathers, people who will have children in the future who are men. We can say, the man is having a baby with his wife, or the man is having a baby. It's not meaning that the man is giving birth to a baby, but you can say the man is having a baby, they are having a baby, they are starting a family. All of these are possible. So here is another word. This is an adjective, and the word is pregnant. Pregnant. When someone is pregnant, well, that someone is a woman usually. Pregnant means there's a baby inside the person. So here's our woman, here's the little baby. So, she has a big belly. We say pregnant for this. She is pregnant. And notice the verb is our be verb. It's not she has pregnant, it's she is pregnant. So you meet somebody and they're pregnant and you want to ask them some questions. I recommend you let them tell you they are pregnant. I don't think it's a good idea to say, "Are you pregnant, miss?" Because if they're not pregnant, it's embarrassing. So once the woman says, "Oh, I'm pregnant. I'm having a baby soon," you can ask some questions. Maybe you ask, "When is the baby due?" This means, when is the baby due? By due, we mean the date the doctors think the baby is coming. So doctors will give a due date. So Lucy might say, "Oh, my baby is due in July," just as an example. You might ask somebody, "Oh, is it a boy or is it a girl? Do you know if it's a boy or a girl?" That's another common question people ask pregnant women. Wow, we have seen so much life already. We saw birth, school, work, engagement, marriage, having children. Now let's talk about retirement. So retire is a verb. We have retired with ed, which is an adjective, and retirement, which is a noun. And all of these mean the same thing. They mean when you stop working and you don't plan to work again. And usually this happens at a certain age. So in many countries, the age might be 60. At 60, people stop working. Or maybe it's 65 or 67. So when you are at a certain age and you stop working, we call that retire. So let's look at how we use these in a sentence. My father is retired. So we're describing the status of my father. My father is retired. He retired in 2008, but right now he is retired. He's no longer working. If I want to talk about a year, the specific date when it happened, when the retirement started, we can use retire as a verb. When did he retire? He retired in 2008. We can also choose a specific date. He retired on June 23rd, 2008. Or we can also say the age with the verb. He retired at 65, meaning 65 years old. I would like to retire when I'm 65 years old. So what are some questions you might use with this vocabulary? Well, you might ask somebody, "Oh, are you retired?" You might ask somebody, "When do you plan to retire?" When do you plan to retire? "Oh, I plan to retire next year." Or if you know someone is retired, you might ask them, "Are you enjoying your retirement?" And again, retirement is a noun, so you have a verb in front of it. In this case, the verb is enjoy. Are you enjoying your retirement? "Yes, I love being retired," or "No, I hate retirement." I think most people enjoy their retirement. So now we're at the finale. So we're going to talk about the words pass away, died, and dead. So pass away is another way to say died. And this means when life ends. So let's look at these words in sentences. We can say, he passed away in August. This means the person died in August. She died in 1974. So if we have a year afterwards, we use in. She died in 1998, for example. We also have the word dead. Dead is an adjective. So died and pass away are verbs. Dead is an adjective, and it has the exact same meaning, but we use it to describe a person. So for example, for all you Elvis fans out there, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, Elvis Presley is dead. I know some people say Elvis lives on Mars, or they see Elvis walking around, but Elvis Presley is dead. Just to show an example of how to use the word dead. All right, so we've talked about these words. We began with the beginning of life, and we went through a lot of different stages, and now we're at the end of life. And again, not everyone goes through all these different stages, but I think it's very important to have vocabulary for all of the different stages. So, sorry, there was something I forgot to mention. So questions, let's go back, let's rewind and talk a little bit about what questions people might ask when it comes to death and dying. Well, remember, death, especially in the West, it can be very taboo to talk about. People try to avoid talking about death when they can. And if somebody dies, some people want privacy, so they don't want to talk about it. Other people do want to talk about it. It depends on the person. So if you are close, if you're a close friend or a family member, you might ask someone, if someone in their family or their friend dies, you might say, oh, how did he die? How did Elvis die? How did she die? Meaning, what is the manner? How did the person die? I wouldn't ask this question unless I felt comfortable with the person. Another question you might ask is, when did Elvis pass away? When did Elvis die? So these are some examples of questions you might hear with the word pass away or die. All right, so thank you so much for watching this video. Again, lots of great words in this video to learn and lots of great questions to remember. In order to practice what you learned here, I recommend you go to www.engvid.com, and there you can take our quiz to practice what you learned in this video. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel. There you can find more examples of lessons on all sorts of things, like pronunciation, vocabulary, listening, reading, writing, and so much more. So thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.